Today on Tricrow Studios, we do a high gain amp shootout between a early 90s Marshall JCM 900, 4100, so the one that everyone hates, the 100-watt high gain dual reverb, and the Peavey XXX, which I think is just called Mark 1, because the Mark 2 version's like, what, a retooled JSX? I would like to reiterate here that this is a high gain amp shootout. That's why it's titled High Gain Shootout. So you're not going to hear any cleans, you're not going to hear any breakups or anything. This is just high gain geared towards metal. All of that can be done in a different video. I'd also like to note that the JCM 900 is boosted with an Ibanez TS9, where you wouldn't generally do that with a Peavey XXX, and I haven't. But I do have two sound samples for you today. The first of which is in drop C. That's a more balanced EQ type setting with the XXX on the ever so lovely crunch channel with the dampening set to loose. And the second of which is a more scoop type setting. That's in drop B with the XXX on the ultra channel, and I made the odd decision to switch the dampening switch over to mid, which I find is a little I'll talk about later. All right, so there you go. There are the two sound samples for the high gain amp shootout between the early 90s. So it's it's like a 90 or 91. I think it's a 91. JCM 900, 4100, the 100 watt high gain dual reverb. So the one that everyone hates, which I really think they either haven't played it or they've only played it at bedroom levels. Bring the volume up to like 230, you'll be quite happy. And the Peavey XXX. Again, I think it's just the XXX version 1, because the version 2 or the XXX2 is a retooled JSX, I believe. So I want to address the dampening switch comment that I made a little earlier. I know that for a lot of XXX owners, because the dampening switch, so it's like your resonance control, there's loose, there's mid, and then there's tight. Everyone likes to put it in either mid or tight, so they can especially say they get that tight sound. I like my sound tight. It gives you street cred, I guess. However anyone sets their settings, those are their settings. It sounds good to them. What I find works best for me, and especially for the XXX, when you have that dampening switch set to loose, you get a little more control and a little more focus over your low and your low mids. Now, the Peavey mids are I like them a lot. They're very important for growl, some like low end and mid focus, growl and grunt. And when you take it off of that loose setting for your dampening, you have to kind of counteract that by bringing up the, I hate that they call it bottom and not low end. So you have to bring the bottom up from the sound. And that will take a lot of focus into the low end and not necessarily to the low mids, which are very important. Again, it's however you set your amp that works for you is awesome. But that's just why I say, unfortunately, I moved it over to the mid setting, because I feel I lost a lot of the characteristics of the XXX. But anyway, regardless, it's at this point in the video where I like to go over kind of what I've gained from doing a shootout like this. And I knew that a boosted Marshall JCM 900 sitting with the volume for channel B sitting at about 230, so 230 in clock settings, not on 2.5, that would give me inherently a little more focus on the high end and the high mids. A lot more focus than the XXX would. XXX, I find is a very consistent amp. Again, not one that you need to boost. You don't generally throw an Ibanez TS9 in the mix. You can, it works, but it does so much work on its own. So there's a lot more consistency, I find, in the overall EQ. So there would be a little more focus on that low end and the overall Peavey mids. So you'd hear a lot more high end grit versus low end all set mids, grunt and growl from both of these amps. Both amps are fantastic amps to own. I consider myself very lucky to own both of them. Again, I do have to say, both of these amps get an attenuator if you plan on using them at bedroom level. I understand owning amp heads and such in a bedroom level setting, because you can easily switch out heads. However, if you're not bringing up the volume on the amps, that's actually when tubes start to heat up and the EQ starts to liven up, the amp starts to open up, and you don't have to have as much focus on the high and the low, so you don't have to have those almost dime to get a sound that you think you would normally get from those amps. When you raise the volume goes up, but the EQ starts to head back towards noon when it's at a louder volume. And because we're talking about a Peavey amp here, I do want to note, this is not a huge deal, and I know there's going to be some Peavey owners that'll say, I've never had that happen on a Peavey amp before. But the potentiometers and everything that goes along with it for Peavey amps, for some reason, get a lot dirtier, a lot faster than most other amps. So when that happens, that's usually when you get like the crackly pot, when you start moving things around. However, what I find happens a lot of the times with the Peavey amps, every like year and a half to 2 years or so, although my 6505 Plus hasn't had that happen yet. My XXX, probably in a month or two, I gotta pull the chassis up. But you can actually get, on your volume and your gain, you can get little dead spots. So you start to raise the gain and you start to raise that volume, it goes, and then it cuts, or it just starts weaving in and out like it's losing power. Very easy to fix. You pull the chassis out, and then you get some contact cleaner, you spray every single one of those potentiometers and move them around. That'll clean everything, clean the contacts. Boom, done. Takes about a half an hour, but it's something that is, I find very important to note in case you want to purchase a Peavey amp on the used market. Anyway, that's all I have to say. That's all I want to say. My apologies to the tight players. Again, it's a YouTube video that I do to really entertain myself and to kind of, I get curious every now and then with all the amps that I own. So this is definitely not a scientific video, and everyone has different settings. Everyone plays with different guitars. Everyone plays at different volumes. Everyone has different setups. So the best way to find out the true, absolute for you differences between both of these amps is to play them yourselves. It's the only way to really experience it. Anyway, thanks for watching.